This is Ram Dass, here and now, and I'm your host, Raghu Marcus. I have a new talk from Ram Dass. Well, new is not the right word since it's from June 23rd, 1973. And what's interesting here is that this is just a little less than 3 months before Neem Karoli Baba Maharaji left that body. So Ram Dass had been back to India, where he went the second time in 1970. In fact, I came back with him in the spring of 1972, and so he had been back in America for about a year teaching. And in this particular talk, it starts out talking about grace, the Guru's grace, to be able to, for everyone to be able to get together to have this gathering that he was at on that day. So the Guru's grace to have satsang, which we were told many times, not just back in that day, but over time, that being able to gather together with like-minded people is one of the most beneficial practices that we could enter into. And so to this day, I always recommend to people, however you can find a satsang, a sangha, a like-minded group to be able to hang out with, just, have some food together, chant together, meditate together, listen to talks, read together from books of people who have tread the path before. And I might mention in that, since I'm thinking about it right now, at ramdas.org, we have a fellowship program in which we put people together in different parts of the country, and they gather together, from small groups to a little bit larger groups on a regular basis. So I'm going to write to info@ramdas.org if you have any interest in trying to see about joining a group that may already be started through this Ram Dass Fellowship. And at the same time, we do Ram Dass immersion retreats in California, and you might ask about that at info as well. info@ramdas.org. So a little divergent there, but it made me think when Ram Dass talked about the grace of being able to get together. And then he talked about when life brings joy and prosperity, you say, how great is the Guru's grace? But then, can you say that when you've fallen down, when there's despair or when there's negativity? Can you still say that? Very difficult. And there's one great example of this. A Swami, his name is Swami Ram Dass, who lived, I think, until the 50s or early 60s of the last century. And he has these great books. They're kind of like memoirs of his travels around India. And he was an extraordinary being that was as surrendered as anyone could get, at least in my mind, in regards to Guru's grace or Ram's grace. One story that's I can remember from the book is he gets on a train, a very crowded train, and he goes into a compartment, and unfortunately there's no room in any of the seats, but he spies up top where the luggage rack is a spot where he could actually curl up and lay down and sleep for the night. So he sees that and he climbs up there and he says, "Thank you, Ram, for the grace of providing me a space to be able to sleep." And then the train takes off, and then in the middle of the night, when new passengers get on, a very gruff, large man comes into the compartment and sees him there and sees that's the only place this man could put his bag. He grabs him by the scruff of the neck and throws him on the floor of the train. And Swami Ramdas looked up and said, "Thank you, Ram, for whatever lesson I needed in humility," something like that, which seems outrageous, right? Completely, especially in our culture. How could that happen? How could you even have that kind of an attitude? It is possible, and you might pick up that book, by the way. Just Swami Ramdas, and this Ramdas had only one S. And there's plenty of stories about his path, which was, as I said, very, very extraordinary. And Ramdas goes on in this talk to talks about when, this is a good one, unless one honors Shiva, and obviously Shiva is the god of destruction, so destructive forces, one can't unite or merge with Ram. And that goes hand in hand with the idea of accepting and changing your relationship to suffering, so that one can see that through suffering there is growth. We can grow, and we can get to a place where we are not rejecting suffering. So that's Ramdas talks about that. And there's a great story here, which I've wanted, Ramdas tells this in different talks, and I've wanted to share this. I don't know if we put out so many talks as podcasts that it's possibly there is duplication. We try our best to not do that. But in this particular case, this is a rendering of a story of Ramdas meeting Lama Govinda, a great Tibetan Buddhist. He was German, and he lived in Almora, and he lived there when we were first in India, together with Ramdas. And it's a story of Maharaji telling him to go see Lama Govinda. And the interesting thing is, Lama Govinda and his wife, I can't remember which one, had made some disparaging remark about Maharaji in a letter to somebody that Ramdas was sent this letter. It's a fascinating story, and how it ends up, and the reason that Maharaji sent Ramdas is to Lama Govinda is really interesting, in that Ramdas always considered the Buddhist path as the deep, difficult path, using the intellect and very extensive meditation practices. And the path of bhakti was kind of a sloppy, easy way out. And he always considered it a lesser path, even though he had met Maharaji and he was obviously on that path. That's why I'm going to name this talk, this excerpt from this talk, basically the true secret teaching, because it all came full circle back to Ramdas about the efficacy of the path that he was on through this meeting with Lama Govinda. It's an amazing story, and of course really detailed and well told by Ramdas. And I think you'll all really enjoy it. And this ends with Ramdas talking about his being phony holy, and how he had gone off into a retreat in Arizona with the idea of getting deeply into meditative practice and so on. And it started out with him ending up watching a lot of television and drinking beer, and it's really revealing, as usual from him, with great honesty. It's just this is a fun talk. I think you'll all enjoy it. So I will say no more, but I should say, just as I reiterate as much as possible to you all about support for the Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com, and you can make a donation, and a recurring donation is great. And like this book by Swami Ramdas, for instance, there's a couple of them. They're, as I said, memoir biography kind of books. Just look them up on Amazon and pick up our link. Just copy and paste it. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com, and you'll see the Amazon on Amazon on the menu, and just click that and copy and paste the link into your bookmark bar, so that whenever you buy anything from Amazon, we get a little piece of it. Enough said about that. So this is Ramdas from June 1973, and we're going to call it The True Secret Teaching on Ramdas, Here and Now, on the Be Here Now Network.
Just our being together here is such grace, so much blessing for one birth. Just as last evening, Hari described how, as Larry, with a sore leg from a fall during a morning ritual under LSD, and despite the subway ride, and despite the fact that nobody would join him to go, he still found himself going to hear Swami Satchidananda in New York City, and he said he was already working on me, that he could overcome my tamasic nature to get me to go through all that, to get to him. You certainly cannot believe any less of this moment, that forces are afoot in every one of our lives that brings us here. It is not by chance that we happen to meet. And it's interesting to examine that chance occurrence, because it's certainly easy at the moment when it's all beautiful to say, what grace, what a blessing. Certainly the Guru is smiling upon me to have allowed me to have satsang again. The reason it's worth examining is to see if the concept of some overriding plan can become such a dominant theme in our consciousness that when the drama changes, when the melodrama gets heavy, when you've just fallen from the tree, you can equally say, what grace. Oh, thank you. Swami Ramdas is reported to have said, when he had been thrown out of a temple one night and had to sleep by the riverbank where the mosquitoes were particularly fierce, and thus he couldn't sleep at all, he kept saying, oh, thank you, Ram, for coming in the form of mosquitoes to keep me awake so I could remember you. In the Ramayana, there are two places in the Tulsidas version where Ram makes it very clear that unless one honors Shiva, one cannot come to Ram. Now, Ram is an incarnation of Vishnu, generally connected with the preserving and maintaining and very loving and supportive forces in the world. Shiva, on the other hand, is often connected, associated with the chaotic or destructive or unpredictable or what are often called the malevolent forces in the world. And Ram says, unless you honor Shiva, you cannot come to me. There's a temple right at the very tip of India called Rameshwaram. It's where Ram did puja to Shiva before going across to Ceylon, to Sri Lanka, to rescue Sita, his wife. It's interesting to reflect on what does it mean to honor Shiva. It's so easy when you get high in a situation, whether it's satsang or whatever, meditation, and you say, oh, I feel the presence. I'm being given grace. But what about when you're despairing and you don't feel the presence? You think that's any less grace? Last night, Hari said one thing which I guess I disagree with the sort of attitude that he reflected. He said he was doing karma yoga a lot because he guessed he was just too gross to do any other form of yoga. Now, I must say that I shared that opinion about karma yoga. When I went to India last time in 1970, I went in order to meditate, in order to get holy. I had been lecturing and teaching in America and doing whatever my hypocritical poor light would allow. And my own hypocrisy overwhelmed me, and it drove me back to the feet of my guru. I was just drunk for satsang. I was hooked. I needed to get back to my connection. And my plan was to check in with him, get his blessing, and then go to a cave, which he would bless me to do. This was my mind, okay? And there I would sit with his blessing, and I would meet Babaji, and I would meet Buddha, and I would meet Christ, and I would hang out with the astral team, and they would give me all the secrets. And maybe I'd go north to the edge of Tibet, and I would get some deep teachings from the Tibetans. And I would take deep meditation practices on various visualization exercises. I might even be walled into a building for 3 years, 3 months, 3 days, 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 3 seconds. And I thought, when I come back to America next time, boy, it's going to be different. I'm not going to be just a phony yogi. I'll be really the real thing. And I went to, with the group that was together at that time. I went to Bodh Gaya, where Buddha got enlightened. Seemed like a good place to start, because I couldn't find my guru, because he was, as he is wont to do. So we all enrolled in these courses, these 10-day courses, and we took a series of them. And it was very intense and very austere, and we learned how to cheat and cut corners, but it still was pretty fierce. And there was no doubt that some headway was made in that meditation. But after about 4 of the courses, I could see that the slippage was increasing considerably. And that the thing that was missing was that my heart was very dry in that situation. I couldn't open my heart. And just at that time, I had been invited to Shivaratri with Swami Muktananda in Delhi. And I thought, wow, a good Shiva festival, that'll really get me moving again. But I didn't really want to just walk out on the meditation, because I felt that's kind of a cop-out. I mean, here I came to meditate and I'm walking out, to go dance and sing, like any sloppy bhakti would do. So I entered into an arrangement with the most essence meditation teacher that during the monsoon, I found out where he would be up in the mountains, and we made a survey. We went up there in advance, and we found another house that would hold 3 people, and we rented and had to fix up the house, put a new roof on, new water system. Got the house all ready, and I arranged that when he went off for the summer, for the monsoon, summer monsoon, 3 of us would go, and we would be with him, 4 of us, 3 or 4 of us. And we would just get all this intense training in meditation. And I thought, well, as long as I've organized it and prepared for it, now I can go dance and sing, because I can do my sort of sloppy stuff, because I'm really going to do the work later. Well, on the way to Shivratri, it turned out that we met Maharaji, my guru. And in my puffed up pride, I said to him, like a good little boy reporting his work, I said, I've arranged for this teacher and this house, and I'm going to meditate. And I told him this whole story with a question mark at the end, like, aren't I good? Or isn't that wonderful? Or isn't this just what you want? And his answer was, if you desire it. Well, that left me hanging. Okay? Because what he was saying is, you want an ego trip? Go ego trip. Okay? Now, I couldn't understand that. What self-respecting guru would say that meditation was ego tripping? I mean, that seemed like the height of profanity, yogic profanity. Okay? So I thought, well, he's just a silly old man, and he doesn't really understand. And maybe he's saying something much more profound that I'll only understand later after I've meditated. So I'm going to do it anyway, okay? I said, humbly. So when the time arrived, I went up there, and I was so happy to get to this place, because up until then, everywhere I'd gone, there were always Westerners, and it turned out I was always hanging around Westerners and after all, you don't go to India to hang out with Western consciousness. And I was always hanging around Westerners who were looking to me for something or other, which seemed absurd. I mean, they come to the well to drink, and then they're looking to polluted water they brought from the city. I mean, it's so bizarre. But there's a certain culture shock in India, and it's nice to have something to cling to, and I was sort of it. So I went to the mountains, and I was so happy. I was finally away from all of them. Right? And that draggy having to be with them and answer and deal with the stuff all day. And I put away all the musical instruments and all the bhakti schmaltz, and I was going to settle down for serious business that was going to bring me to God. You got the set of the mind? Well, when I arrived there, within about 2 or 3 days, Westerners, other than the 3 people that had been invited, started to trickle in. First 3, then 5, then 8, then 11, till there were about 20 others. And they all said, I said, what are you doing here? Because I thought we were hiding out and we'd kept it really secret. And they all said, well, Maharaji sent us. He said, go be with Ram Dass. So we took over a hotel in the town. But I stayed up in the house with a group up there, and I wouldn't have anything to do with the people down there. I said, look, if you're in the town, that's up to you, but I'll come down and visit every week, but that's all. I don't want anything to do with any of you. I'm here for serious business. Well, then, another week went by, and the teacher didn't show up. And a letter comes from him saying, unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond my control, I will not be able to come this summer. And now I could see whose big hand was behind that. There wasn't any doubt about that. So we arranged to take over the Gandhi ashram in the town. We all moved into the ashram, and we ended up having an ashram for the summer. We all disciplined ourselves. We read the Ramayana and fasted and meditated and lived in silence. We had a very profound, good summer together. Very beautiful, holy place. Okay, now the next component in that training program that is an answer to Hari's point last night was when I got to India this last time, when I was with my guru, he said, who do you want to see when you're in India? And I said, well, I'd like to see Anandamayi Ma, because to see the mother, to have the darshan of the mother, wow. He says, Acha, that's good. Who else? I said, I don't want to see anybody else, just you. So he said to me, see Lama Govinda. I said, Lama Govinda? I said, I've already seen Lama Govinda. I said, he's a very nice man. He's a good German scholar. He's a wonderful Lama, and that's lovely, and he's written some incredibly good books. But, you know, and he says, see Lama Govinda. So that was that. So I kept stalling. And then I heard that he was going to be leaving for Dallas, so Krishna Das, who's going to be playing the drums with me this afternoon, and Annapurna and I went over to visit Lama Govinda. Just to put a little flesh on the bones, just to give you a little feeling for the little divine play in the whole dance. Let me tell you the story in the rich way, rather than the bare bones part. Because the means and the ends are one, by the way, so there's no conclusion in anything I say. It's just like hamburger, it just keeps coming out. we had included a picture of my guru and Lama Govinda in the Be Here Now production. And in the picture was also Lee Gotami, Lama Govinda's Shakti, his wife. And she had taken the picture on an automatic camera, and we had cut her off in the one we had used in the book. And since we were not acknowledging anybody's contributions, we didn't acknowledge that she had taken the picture. And since all her pictures had stamped on the back of them, taken by Lee Gotami, we knew she might have a slight investment in this matter. And I expected to get a little flack from her about this when I should see her. Now, there was a little additional matter that Lama Govinda had written a letter to an editor of Newsweek in Chicago who had photostated it and sent it on to me, in which he said, these Westerners go to India and they take the first guru that comes along. They're so hot to get a guru. Take Dick Alpert. He went and he got hooked up with his second-rate mind reader. Okay. Okay. So now I knew that, see. So I figured if Lee Gotami gives me any trouble about the picture, I will discuss second-rate mind readers, but otherwise I won't do it, see. I mean, I'm not going to just start out with, I just have a little thing in Restore in case. Yogic love, it's just the social dance. So the time came for taking pictures, which it does at most of Lama Govinda's scenes, and I said, well, I'll stay inside. We'll stay inside. You go ahead. And Lee Gotami says, no, you've got to be in the picture too. I'm going to get back at you for, uh-oh, she just did it. So as we were standing posing for the picture, Lama Govinda and I, with some other people, I turned to him and I said, do you really think he's a second-rate mind reader? That's all. I just looked right at him. Well, he went through just long enough to go through the chain to realize that he had just been had. And he lit up, and we looked at each other with total love. We had just broken through all the formalities. And from then on, our relationship was totally joyful. So that evening, the five of us sat together after the other guests had left, and his mind was beautiful. It was like an exquisite crystal, like a beautiful jewel, very clear mind. Now, he represented to me the kind of meditative jnana yoga, the intellect and meditation aspects of yoga, which to me have always been the manly, tough forms of yoga, see? As opposed to the bhakti and karma things, which are what you do if you can't do anything else, see, if your mind's too gross to do anything else. So I said to him, Lama Govinda, what is it you want me to do? Do you want me to go and to study, do visualizations? What is it you'd like now? What kind of Maharaji sent me to you? He must have sent me to you for teaching. I now take you as my teacher. Tell me what to do next. I said, I can go on with my Southern Buddhist meditation or my go into Northern Buddhism. I've been interested in the Nyingmapa, and I can go on with my Padmasambhava mantra, or what do you suggest? I sat as a seeker. And he said, no, you don't understand at all. He said, I've looked at your book and all that. He said, your path is the path of the heart. And he said, your heart is opening. It's all happening to you. You don't have to do anything. Now, he said that, and I wouldn't hear it, see. I said, oh, I know all that. But tell me, what should I do, see? Because you certainly couldn't assume you don't do anything. And he says, no, you don't understand. He said, you're doing your path already. So, now, coming from him, see, I mean, it's one thing if a bhakti says to you, go be bhakti. You say, sure, he's protecting his own investment. But when Lama Govinda, he's got to go against everything he ever talks about, roughly, to tell me to do that when I've asked him for teaching. So in a way, it was incredible that Maharaji would send me to Lama Govinda to get him to tell me that my yoga, see, was bhakti. That was part of it, bhakti. So I began to reassess. So later when I was sitting with Maharaji, I would say to him things like, Maharaji, how do you awaken Kundalini? I mean, just a question in the passing of the day, you know, passing. And he'd say, feed everybody. Feed everybody. I'm ready for pranayam and vastrika, Ram. Feed everybody. Maharaji, how do I get finished? Love everyone. And all he kept instructing me was, and all of us, was love, serve, remember. Love, serve, remember. Now, I couldn't help but break up over the cosmic joke that I should go to India, to the deep, dark, mysterious East, to learn the secrets that will bring man to final realization, to bring them back home to the primitive tribes in the outer lands. Right? And I come back bearing the gift of 3 words, love, serve, and remember, which have already been hanging around here for years, as I seem to recall Christ reminding us. And in the 2 years I was in India, I think in total, there were 14 days when I was not surrounded with Westerners, doing exactly the same thing I do in the United States. So what I was forced to recognize was, I was forced to do what's called a figure ground reversal. Because what I saw hanging out and talking about God with people as was what you do until you do the real thing. And now I had to flip it over and see that maybe that was the real thing, and all the other things were support systems. Now, faced with the possibility that the rest of this incarnation, or at least at this time, my dharma was to do karma yoga and bhakti yoga, I started to examine the nature of these yogas a little more carefully, since I was stuck with them, apparently. And I must say, I shared that little tone of that quality in the way Hari put that, although I'm not attributing to him that he shares that opinion, but the tone that I got from the way he said it. That you're so gross, you just do karma yoga and bhakti yoga. It's sort of, we used to think of very gentle paths, like going to church on Sunday is a very gentle path. Then there are steep paths like Zen Buddhism, where you just sit and think of nothing. And most people can't stand that because that's too steep. They need a support system like a god or something or a church or a ritual to cling to. And there are these different steepnesses of path. And karma yoga has always been connected with doing good, gray ladies serving in hospitals, and, sort of a nice, gentle way to come to God over the next 10,000 incarnations. So a deeper study of the Bhagavad Gita, which of course is the text for karma yoga, and I entered full steam into karma yoga. Figured, well, if it's my yoga, then I'll do it. Now, When I came back to America in '72, I was living not in time. I was going to live like my guru lives. He's just somewhere until he isn't there anymore, and then he goes somewhere else. And you never know when he'll be there or when he won't. I figured I'll live outside of time, because time was really scaring me about the West. Schedules, and you're going to lecture, like you're going to lecture Thursday night at 8, like Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. And many hundreds of people are going to be expecting your consciousness to get them off at 9 o'clock on Saturday. So everything you did Friday night, everything you did Thursday, Friday, you know, if you had a lustful thought on Wednesday, that was going to affect Saturday morning. So you had to watch it, and you had to get so programmed. And if you had 2 a week, you know, it wiped out the whole week. You had to just sort of sit in like in a straitjacket to just stay together enough. And I was like, time was my enemy. I was always like afraid to let go. So I thought, look, I'm not going to live in time. I'm just going to live. I'll just be where I am. And people would call me from New York to New Hampshire, and they'd say, will you be there tomorrow afternoon? I want to come see you. Meaning, will you be holy tomorrow afternoon at 2? I'd say, I don't know. They'd say, well, what do you mean you don't know? I'd say, well, I don't know where I'll be tomorrow afternoon at 2. Meaning, not only I don't know where I'll be geographically, but I don't know where I'll be in terms of my consciousness, because my consciousness, unlike Swamiji's consciousness, is not nice and even and smooth and together. My mind is a little bit like a roller coaster, and it's not any roller coaster that you ride the same route each time. Each time it's a different route, so you can't tell if you felt you get really it's all pouring through you, and everybody looks at you and they see the highest light, and you say, oh boy, all I got to do is keep cool, and this is the way it's going to be, you know, and I can just be the transmitter. And so you make a plan for tomorrow at 3. Tomorrow at 3 comes, and somebody drives up the driveway, and you think, oh God, do I have to see them? Oh God. You know, I want to see Perry Mason on television, and I've got to see these people. Now, I don't want to see Perry Mason, but I do want to see Perry Mason, see? Because I want to see Perry Mason, I hate these people driving up the driveway. And I don't want to hate them because I'm a holy man. I want to love them, but I hate them. Okay? So I thought, okay, I'm going to change all that. I'm only going to be holy when I feel holy, right? People come and I don't feel like seeing them, I'll say, go away. Or I'll just disappear. Or whatever. You know, I just won't be holy unless I feel like being holy. And when I'm holy, I'll be really holy. Because I was tired of being a phony holy man. Because if they've driven up there, they've driven from Ohio, see? And they come to see Ram Dass. And they walk in, and you wait the last minute, turn off the television set, and you rush up. And you light an incense and candle, and you sit down, and they come in and you say, welcome. You know, well, that kind of hypocrisy, you can only live with yourself so long. I mean, it's just too heavy. It's just too ugly. You know, it's just too horrible. So, and my guru had kept saying to me, tell the truth. Tell the truth, Ram Dass. He kept catching me not telling the truth. That was the, I mean, really little things, you know. I'll just give you a little quick example. I've mentioned this in lectures in the past. Once I won't tell the whole story, just a little part of it. A judge, a high Supreme Court official from Uttar Pradesh came to have Maharaji's darshan. And we were sitting on the outer rim, the Westerners, and the Indians were in close, and which alternated from day to day. And Maharaji gave this high court official a tremendous buildup about what an important man I was in America, which he had never done, and I never even thought that it was remotely relevant to anything he and I did together. He said, ex-professor, big university, you know, and he just full of lies. Oh, incredible stuff. And he snowed the official, you know. Finally, the official, with great awe, really, because turned around and he said, well, I'm honored to meet you. And I said, well, how do you do? He says, perhaps you'd like to visit the High Court. Now, in truth, I had no desire whatsoever to visit the High Court. I come from a family of lawyers. I've been in courts, and I didn't go to India for that particular trip. So I said to him, well, that would be very nice. So he said, well, tomorrow at 10? So I thought, uh-oh. So I said, well, you'll have to ask my guru, figuring he'll get me off the hook. So he says, Maharaji, can Ram Dass visit the High Court tomorrow at 10? Maharaji says, if he says it'll be very nice, it'll be very nice. He'll come at 10. It's always pointing like this, like, watch it, baby. I tell the truth. Just little ones, little social, those little white ones, you know, those don't hurt anybody, you know. There was a woman with him one day, and he came up and he said, do you remember her? And I said, oh, yes, and I didn't. And he said, yes, she's Dada's sister-in-law. And Dada's from Allahabad. So I said, oh, yes, we met in Allahabad. She says, no, we met right here. I said, oh. Maharaji went like that. It's just these little ones he was always getting me at. You know, it's like, tell the truth, babe. Come on, tell the truth. Truth gets you high. Tell the truth. So I thought when I came back to America, I'll just be straight. If I'm not feeling high, I won't make believe, you know. I was trying to get very, very straight. Okay, so it came. I sort of floated around the country, just being wherever I was, and when I felt really together and like it was clear and I was calm and centered and loving and had something to offer, I was with people and it was beautiful, and I could feel Guru's grace coming through on people. And then when I wasn't, I just went off and, you know, read and studied. Then I decided, I had just done 4 or 5 lectures with Allen Ginsberg as benefits for Trungpa Rinpoche, and I decided those were in time. Those were the first things I had done in time. And then I thought I'd go into a retreat for a month. So I rented a cabin in Tucson, Arizona, in the mountains south of it, which had a kitchen, refrigerator, stove, beds. It was a bird estuary, so there were lots of bird lovers. Those were the only people there. Me and bird lovers, so I was not relevant in their universe. So it was a certain kind of privacy, even though there were other cabins. And I walked into this place and found, to my dismay, that the one other thing that the cabin had was a television set. Now, I had gone in to do a prayer. I was going to do a prayer for 30 days, which was the Sutra of the Third Chinese Patriarch of Zen, which is just a little tiny booklet, and I was just going to work with that for 30 days. But I spent the first 8 days, roughly 12 hours a day, looking at television. Now, after I looked at television for the first day, see, I was so horrified that I might spend the next 29 doing it, that I took a screwdriver out of my car and I unwired the television set. And I put it in the closet. And I put a blanket over it. And put it way behind my bag and everything. And I closed the door and I sat down. And around 5:30, I thought, well, I could just look at the news. So I took the television set out, wired it up again, looked at the news, and suddenly it was 1 in the morning, right? Three or four cans of beer later. Now, it's very hard to think of that as sadhana. However, in that cabin, besides the television set and all the food that I had filled the refrigerator with, and the bed and the bathtub that I could take frequent baths in, and all the different ways I could play in my sensual delights, there was also my consciousness sitting in that cabin saying, far out. Imagine that, you know. You going to tell anybody about this one? I mean, sitting me with that guy that said, gee, I think if I take the broccoli and put some of that spaghetti sauce over it, and bake it, it'll be just like a pizza, and oh boy, and if I do that, you know, and then I can get that done quick so I can watch Kung Fu and, you know. That guy was doing his thing, and this other voice was saying, far out, or Maharaji was saying, teek, teek, it's the way it is. Okay, right. Okay. There was the voice in me that was sitting watching all this, just noticing it, witnessing it, watching with, at first, horror. See? Because when you meet Shiva in yourself, you are horrified. When you meet him anywhere, he's really scary. In the Shiva Stotram, it says, when Shiva dances, the beings in all three worlds tremble. In all three worlds tremble, because his dance is so violent. And when I'm sitting in there with the television set, you know, I get in this funny predicament. I get the food ready just as the program began. This particularly happened to me not long ago when the Watergate hearings started. See, Watergate, even more than my orality, is watching Watergate, okay? And I was sitting with the Watergate hearings just began, and I had the food, but I couldn't eat the food till I consecrated it. But I couldn't stop watching Watergate long enough to consecrate it. And if I didn't consecrate it quick, the food would get cold, okay? I mean, you can't look at television and go, Brahmavanam, 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 Brahmavanam. I mean, it's, you know, it's just too shoddy, you know? Okay. I mean, you're faced with these real dilemmas, right, in doing sadhana. And I think you should recognize that this is where it really hurts, you know. This is where we live most of the time, you know, unfortunately. Well, then the next week I managed to, I would just unplug the set and put a cloth over it. I wouldn't put it in the closet. And I found I was getting a little bored, so I was only looking at television 3 or 4 hours a day. And then I got into feeding birds and studying bird names and things like that. By the third week, I was sitting a little quieter and deepening a little bit, and I could sit by the river for a few hours, and I was starting to eat more simpler food, and I was losing interest in television. And by the fourth week, I was really in pretty calm, centered space, and I was starting to feel that energy again. I was getting that place that you get when you've been here for 9 days. That connectedness, that, yeah, right, that's what it's about. Whew. Wow, whew. Boy, this is the real, yeah. You all know, I'm sure. Well, while I was in there, I looked at the whole scene and I thought, you know, really, if I'm going to do karma yoga, I really should just go into it, really just go into it. And I had a big folder of places that had invited me to speak. And I just kept them in a folder and wrote back saying, I don't do that kind of thing, but if I ever do, I'll let you know. Benefits and lectures and all kinds of stuff. So I said, okay. I got the inner message, because I live totally intuitively now. Because what we in the West call intuition, I would call the voice that's guiding me from within. And sometimes my intuition is a reflection of certain of my desires, and sometimes it's a reflection of a deeper voice. And I never know which one it is. And sometimes it tells me to do something, and I start to do it, and then it turns out it was just another ego trip, and it falls away. I see its impurity. And sometimes I start to do it, and it feels right on. Go, 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 and I just stay right in this space as I'm doing it. Then I know, right, that's right on. It's all a hunt and peck process of learning to hear that inner voice, because you can't hang on the coattails of the guru every minute saying, Swamiji, what do I do now? Should I sharpen this pencil now? Should I sit? What shall I do now?
This podcast is brought to you by the Love Serve Remember Foundation and ramdas.org. We appreciate you listening, and we appreciate all the support that you've given us. Please continue that support and donate at ramdas.org. We can then continue to share what Ramdas has been sharing for all of these years. Thank you. Good afternoon, Ramdas. Nice to see you. Hi, everyone. This is our maybe once a month Sunday hangout with Ramdas, and I'm Raghu Marcus. So, I think I told you on the phone, I have this absolutely amazing. I found a letter, okay? One of those airgrams, remember? Like we used to send from India before there was what there is now?
Yeah.
And it was from Krishnadas to me. You're talking maybe mid-'80s or something. And he was with K.C. Tiwari and everybody out there. We had 3 major mentors in India: K.K. Shah, Dada Mukherjee, and K.C. Tiwari. We don't mention Siddhima in the same breath because she's her own mother thing to us. I mean, beyond. But these people directly influenced us, and were really part of what everyone receives, actually, when they come to Maui, to these retreats, when we're all gathered together with you and Krishnadas and all that. So anyhow, KC was one of those, and in fact, we're actually we're going to make a little. We are in the midst of making a documentary about him, because he's the one person of those 3. Dada had books. Now KK has a book where people can actually reference who these people were to the Westerners that were over there at that time. So in the process of that, I happened upon this letter from Krishnadas that I'll read to you now, which is one time K.C. Tiwari and Maharaji met up in Nainital. Okay. One time Maharaji came very late to Nainital. He was in a great mood, very happy. It was before Hanumangarh, which is the temple, the first temple Maharaji built in Nainital, in that area. It was before Hanumangarh was built and before night driving was allowed in Nainital. Okay, so you had to walk.
What?
Night driving, no night drive. Before that, it wasn't allowed because they didn't have proper. Not that they have great lighting right now. I don't know why. It didn't make sense. They walked. They walked, or rather ran, out to the place where the Hanumangarh temple would eventually be built, right? And now that place,
That's quite a walk.
yeah, that place is where it was a cemetery or an internment place for orphans and children that had become very sick, right? It was a very haunted place. So they walked out there, ran out there. Many devotees gathered, as they used to around Maharaji. After some time, Maharaji said, KC, these people are always asking me to show them God. KC said, well, so show them. Maharaji said, how can I show them when I haven't seen myself? KC said, you mean there is no God? What kind of an exchange is that, right? Maharaji said, that's not what I mean. After a few minutes, he said, you are a Brahmin. Have you read the Bhagavad Gita, the Gita, he said? KC said, yes, I've read it. Maharaji said, did Arjun see God? KC said, yes. Maharaji then started abusing KC. You Brahmins and sadhus go on confusing the people and misleading them. Did Arjun see God? KC said, yes. Again, Maharaji became furious and started yelling about how the Brahmins are the cause of all the misunderstanding and suffering of the poor people. Again, Maharaji said to KC, did Arjun see God? By that time, KC went emphatically, no! Maharaji was silent. After a few minutes, Maharaji said, Arjun could not see. Krishna said, see, but he could not see. When did he see? KC said, when Krishna gave him the third eye vision? Maharaji said, it comes from grace. Man cannot demand it or see with mortal eyes. But if you look at the lofty mountains, or the rolling sea, or the vast sky, and think the Lord made this, it's all his projection, then you can see. How great is that? And then in this letter, Krishnadas says, he said, after a few minutes, Krishnadas said to KC, well, what about the mess that man has made? And KC said, why should you judge? It's just your judgmental mind. That's how he responded. And Krishnadas said, enough said. We can't demand. It will come by his grace. We should just try to remember that not a leaf flutters to the ground that God does not know. Nice letter, eh? From 30 odd years ago.
Well, that's a beautiful. I'm happy. That's a wonderful letter.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine Maharaji saying, how can I show them when I haven't seen myself? And Tiwari, the only way he reacted was, you mean there's no God? Because obviously... so
how does he interpret it?
I think that Maharaji saying that is simply, and when there's no more subject object in a being that's gone beyond, there's no more I'm the way that we see things, you know. We're seeing it, there's a subject and an object. When there's no subject and object, what do you see? You don't see something separate from yourself, right? That level of it, maybe I'm being...
It's being, not seeing.
Yeah, being, not seeing, exactly. Exactly. And then this whole thing around Arjun could not see. Krishna said see, but he could not see. When did he see? And when Krishna, when the grace happened, which is karma and grace being one, so it can't happen until that.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
What do you mean karma and grace one?
Well, if Krishna is going to give the grace to Arjun,
Oh, I see. I see. I see. Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah. So anyhow,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so I read this, and as I'm reading it, and I'm thinking of you, everybody out there, by the way. Ram Dass is sitting in his chair. Well, you can see him sitting in the chair if you're watching the YouTube video. And he's looking out at beautiful
The ocean.
ocean forever. It just stretches forever. I mean, he's right at the edge of on Maui, near the cliff, which is at the edge.
Yeah.
You could call it the edge of awakening.
And the clouds. And the blue sky. And the trees. And the grasses. It's all manifestation. It's hard to be it and see it. Because yeah.
We like experiencing. So once we're in the relationship to experiencing, we are in a duality.
Our senses are obstacles to our knowing, knowing who we are. Knowing
But then on the other hand, the ability to utilize them in order to practice is a boon. So it's a double-edged sword. It traps you, as you've said many times, at the same time as it enables you to do the kinds of things that allow the being to happen, being here now, rather than the subject-object, which includes judging and so on and so forth. So, like last night, I was just telling you, we did a kirtan here in Asheville, where I live, and I had a funny experience. I was singing something, leading something, that Shiva chant, and I had just learned the melody, so I wasn't able to play it where I didn't have to think about anything. You know what I mean? Where it was just automatic. That's the advantage of Krishnadas. He's out there every night. It's all automatic, so he can just be completely present. You know. So, but I was in a situation where I wasn't comfortable because I really didn't know it, and I was trying to let go into the moment, and I was like fighting myself. And then at one point, something flipped, and I just, okay, it's whatever the mantra took me to a place beyond. I was still fumbling a little bit, but I wasn't attached to it, and it wasn't stopping the moment. And
your attachment.
Yeah, yep, to doing good, being good, all of that bullshit. You know, that all went away, and I found myself completely in the moment with the mantra, and so that sensory thing really worked out well for me last night, of the sound, expressing the sound, the mantra, and hearing it, and
the sound of the mantra.
The sound of the mantra.
Yeah.
yeah, took over. So that's certainly a place. It's interesting we're talking about this actually because I also wanted to mention to you that I think I did mention somebody wrote us and with some questions for a publication actually in Germany. And it's funny because one of the things I was just going to ask you a couple of the questions because I think everybody would be interested in them. And we're talking about practice now and the way that it can or sensory stuff can trap you big time into an experiential dynamic, which is difficult sometimes to get out of. And that's why I just said the mantra, the repetition of the mantra for me last night automatically moved me out of it. But one of the questions that they asked is the why why is it so important? Because you have said it in many times, you Ram Dass, over the years, that a spiritual practice is important. Why?
Well, you mean sadhana?
Yeah, sadhana.
Um, Sadhana helps us get into what we are, which are our souls. Most people don't identify with their soul. The perception of the world, of themselves, is different. It's different from the ego. Different from the psychology. And the soul has love, has compassion, has wisdom, has peace, has joy. That's all you're missing. All you're missing. And you've got to get to your soul. I have a phrase to use to go to the soul. I am loving awareness. 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 And you repeat that. Loving awareness is a name for your soul. For the soul, not your soul. Your soul is something to do with ego. So that's now one. Then sadhana is 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 a prelude to death. Because your death follows from ego to soul, and sadhana is really preparing you,
Hmm.
preparing you for even for sitting bedside by somebody
Hmm.
who's dying, or your parents, for example. That's pretty good.
Hmm. So we could actually say doing spiritual practice sadhana is a way of re-identification. Really, it's re-identifying you from
Yeah.
ego to soul,
Yes.
loving
Yes.
awareness. I mean, people call it many different names, but that re-identification process is. I think you've said before too. We're talking about it's a preparation for final. You know, when you die, your ego, identification, body, all of it goes. But on a day to day basis, which is another good reason for it, it doesn't matter how old you are, but on a day to day basis, that re identification from ego to soul is so absolutely necessary to be able to live from a completely different vantage point.
Oh boy.
Yeah, which you talk about. And since we're talking a little bit about transition, so somebody just quoted one of your books, Still Here, Embracing Age and Change and Dying. The book you finished after you had your stroke. Um, so again, we say these things and use these words, which I myself sometimes have a lot of trouble with because they're easily said and not so easily put into practice. And the word here is embracing, right? Embracing aging, embracing change. Just starting right there.
Embracing change.
Embracing. How do we actually get to a moment where we can put our arms around suffering?
It's where we uh, where we finish with our attachments
Hmm.
and then go towards change. Because the change it would change what it is, and that you have attachments to it. Yeah.
But how do you let go of those attachments? That's the real difficult. You're saying before,
Aha.
yeah.
Maybe grace.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it goes back to sadhana, right? I mean, there's no way you can even get anywhere near, in my mind, uh, the idea of embracing impermanence, change. the idea of embracing in this particular book still here, aging, which all of us that are in the boomer generation are.
I'll tell you, my body is 83, 86, 86. And I'm embracing change, I'll tell you.
Are you? I mean, yeah, you've got it in spades. I know, because we talk all the time. How are you able to embrace when that kind of pain and you're up all night because you've got that nerve stuff going on your leg that just keeps you up? I mean, it's just the thought of it is really difficult. How are you dealing with that in the moment?
I move from that to another pain, and then another pain, and then another pain. I meet them as friends,
Mm.
They're reminders of that I have a body. I go far out to oneness or near the oneness. And I'm still limited time and space. And I better take care of the body because this is my karma. This is my karma.
And grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
That's that fierce grace, that
Yeah.
fierce grace.
A lot of fierce grace going on these days. Yeah. Oh boy.
Well, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's our karma.
There's one interesting question that's about purpose. I mean, this is really probably something good for next generation people to hear from you. Um, they're talking about the importance of finding one's dharma, and they are kind of equating it with purpose. And just my take is um, one's dharma fuels or feeds one's purpose. But like in my own case, dharma, my dharma was when I found it, which is when I met you. I knew, okay, my dharma is to get to know who I truly am and not to be bound by attachment, desire, judgmental mind, and all of that. Was to work at that is. I knew that was what I needed to do in this life, my dharma, and then my purpose developed over years. Where fortunately, I mean, uh, in my case, actually, Maharaji said to me at one point, "What do you do in America?" And I'm trying to figure out. Let's see. program director of a rock and roll station. How do you what? You know, that went through my mind. And before that thought even got complete, he he looked up at me and in English and he pointed his finger and he went, "Broadcaster?" So that kind of set my agenda and purpose for the rest of my life. Here I am sitting here right now in front of you with headphones on. We're doing a Skype podcast, right? But for people, so that's my take about. I found that's what I considered. I found my dharma, and then over time, I found a purpose of. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it had to do with working with you in the early days, and then working over the years in different kinds of media and so on. But what would you say to people about that? What is it to you in terms of dharma and purpose, and how do they meet?
I don't, I don't see the differentiation.
Mm.
Dharma and purpose is intertwined from dharma. Uh, you act dharmically, and it will get you to your goal if you want to go. And Krishna said to Arjuna, "The goal is mine."
Mm.
So we can say the goal is Maharaj's. And the
Yeah.
purpose, I'm trying to figure out what the purpose.
Well, yeah, meaning,
I think that's
what do I do in life? What's my purpose? How do I manifest what my true purpose is in life? And what you're saying is it has to be completely aligned with dharma,
yeah,
which you had just explained with the story of Arjun and Krishna. You align your purpose with me, and I guess that's a terrific thing when you think about in terms of how do you find it and actualize it. Well, the very first thing seems to be that you realize that you're not the doer. That's the lesson,
yeah.
first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita. And so it's to align yourself with Krishna or whoever Krishna, whatever name you want to put to that.
Maharaji.
Maharaji, yeah. Well, easy for us, Maharaji. Which, by the way,
It's easy. It's easy. It's easy for everybody.
Yeah, I know. And there's a question here, which is you found your guru in India and experienced this unbelievable love for him and with him. But most people don't have a guru. They don't find one. What do we do? And does everyone need a guru?
Everyone needs a guru.
Mm.
A guru is within you. It's within your heart and your imagination. And it's each person has a guru. Who's listening that to this is a dharma, and I offer you my guru.
Mhm.
Come on. And then your life's so simple. having a guru, because all the problems you give over to the guru. The guru he has your life. He has your life.
And of course, Ramdas, you wrote a book that going on a couple of million people read called "Be Here Now," and the untold thousands of people, God knows, who all met Maharaji through that book, and then through Miracle of Love, by the way, which came out after it, some years after. Uh, that what that offer that you just made, you made back then. Of course, you were not supposed to make that offer. You weren't supposed to tell anybody about him, but you did. And you said, "Come on, here he is. You can have him too." And of course, the neat part about it is that no necessity for a physical body when we're talking about a being like a siddha like this. No necessity. And so many people have found this and continue to find this, which is to me mind blowing, because I see all the mail coming to Love Serve Remember Foundation from people. I get I just the other day, some young guy who was at the retreat in spring, and he's actually been to a couple of them. He called me and he said, "I'd like to see if you could help me out, because I met you all at the spring retreat. I met Ramdas Krishnadas and all that, and I just here talk about dharma and purpose. This is an actual great story of that. I work for IBM as a salesperson, and I am completely dissatisfied with that. And it's just not something it's fulfilling. And I'm only 24 years old, so I feel it's right for me to go to India and find my dharma." And then I said, "Well, what have you been, taking teachings? Have you known Ramdas?" So it's just a couple of years, not too long. And in his whole tone of voice, I got, okay, Maharaji has he said, "Maharaji has been with me after this retreat in particular in the spring," which is a couple of months ago. We were in Maui together, right? And so I put him on a whole tour through Nainital to meet up with KK, right? And go to Kenchi, and then go just hang out, the whole tour, because that was exactly what he wanted. And he's just going to go off. And then I thought to myself, shit, I went to India when I was 24. I did the exact same thing. And so this story is repeating. And it's just, it's kind of amazing. But that does speak to, he's just aligning himself with that dharma, with Maharaji.
I think if you spy the mail, but you find people that don't go to India.
Yeah.
Don't go to India and get the same hit from Maharaji.
Yeah. No, that's good to make clear. You do not have to go to India. In this particular case, there are people, I'm hearing from people who want advice about, because they know I can tell them where to go in India and give them information and so on. So I'm hearing from that. I'm not hearing from people, although that's not true. I am hearing from people who completely, utterly connect without going anywhere. So it's it certainly runs both ways.
They're few.
Yeah,
they're
more than
very
a few.
few.
Very few? There's a lot.
Very few.
What do you mean?
Compared to the whole number of human beings.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm talking about my little world here, okay? Yes. Uh, um, so here's another thing, and this relates to stuff we've talked about before. Whenever we hang out, especially since the beginning of this year when things changed in our world here. Uh, but this is a question around being happy, just being happy. And I remember um, one little story when my father came to visit my brother and I in India. Unbeknownst that he was going to do that, he suddenly said, wrote us a letter. I'm coming. Great, you know. And anyhow, when he did come, Maharaji said to him, "Why did you come? Why'd you come?" And he said, "Well, I wanted to see how my sons were doing." And Maharaji said, "Well, how are they doing?" And he said, "Well, they seem to be happy." Maharaji said, "Happiness is everything." And so here's a question, you know, how can we be happy when we, you know, our world is not a very happy place right now. We have a lot of unhappy and sad people. And how can we be happy amidst what is going on? And and ultimately, how can we be of service?
Your dharma is to be happy. The- Your your happiness is inside, and that happiness is radiated to the culture. That's that's truly what social action is. And like we do the retreats, and they the retreatants go to after the retreat. They've gone with love, with love, with love, with love. All we did was we provided an environment for that love.
Hmm.
And then they go out from love. And that 300 people or something. And I feel that is my social action. Because this world needs love, needs love, each person's love.
Yeah.
Your neighbors, your dogs, your cats, yourself,
Mm.
yourself, yourself needs love. And when you have love, when you feel loved, you're home.
Yeah.
You're home spiritually.
once you're home there, as you say, spiritually, quote unquote, you're most likely to be feeling at home in every different way. Your physical
And
circumstances.
if this moment, you're burrowing into this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment. Wow. Yum, 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 yum. This moment. Just this moment. Wow. This. It's right there, right there. In a moment, you don't say, it's not time, it's not hours and minutes and stuff like that. A moment is infinite. Is infinite. Just this
Mm. Thank you.
yes.
Well, this is a good way to start off our summer. Right? We're just a day or two after the solstice in 2017. And by the way, everybody. Oh.
I had a solstice gathering.
Yeah.
I went to one that was Hawaiian.
Oh, really?
In a heiau.
Mm.
That's a piece of land that's sacred, and there they prayed, and it was just sensational.
Really?
Sensational.
Was it over the ocean or near the ocean or in the mountains?
Yeah.
In the,
yeah.
the ocean. Uh-huh. Wow.
Mountains and the ocean.
Oh, man.
It was in the mountains, and you should go and see the ocean.
Mm.
And it's Leo, who's she's a holy woman. She has this heiau, a temple.
Yeah.
And there were about 50 of us.
Mm.
Great big circle.
Mm.
And we had love. That circle was full of love.
Mm.
It was the kind of love, spiritual love. It was not loving things or people. It was just love. It was just the kind of love that Maharaj. unconditional love. Unconditional love. Up till then, up to the up to the Maharaj, I had never had unconditional love. I was a good boy. That was loving. I was cute, loving. I was something. I was somebody before, and I still wrestle with that.
Everyone will appreciate that you're still wrestling with anything. See, it's okay.
Yeah.
Wrestling goes on.
Yes.
Wrestling goes on. It's okay. I got that message from you the first minute I saw you and we talked, and that message has stayed all the way through to this moment. And I was going to say, thank you for all of the wrestling that you do, wrestling with that body and dealing with all that stuff and making friends with the pain so you can continue on. I mean, thank you. And thanks for our hangout here today, too.
I'll tell the aches and pains that you think
Who's that? Your cat? A kitty?
Yeah.
All right, so this is Ram Dass Here and Now. We forgot to tell everybody. There's a kitty, little kitty ears. This is Ram Dass Here and Now, and one of our, I shouldn't say live installments, but I should say one of our Sunday afternoon chat installments that I appreciate so much. Gives me an opportunity.
They're really wonderful.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Ram Dass. And everybody, we will see you next time on Ram Dass Here and Now on the Be Here Now Network. Ram Ram.
Goodbye, everybody.
This podcast is brought to you by the Love Serve Remember Foundation and ramdas.org. We appreciate you listening, and we appreciate all the support that you've given us. Please continue that support and donate at ramdas.org. We can then continue to share what Ram Dass has been sharing for all of these years. Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Ram Dass Here and Now. I'm Raghu Marcus, your host for another adventure with Ram Dass. We've picked out a talk today from 1980, actually from my hometown in Montreal. And he did this in front of a kind of a straight-laced audience, if you would call it that, the American Psychiatric, I think, Association. Well, before I get into introducing this talk, I have to make an appeal. As you all know, the Be Here Now Network, which Ram Dass Here and Now podcast, along with Joseph Goldstein and Jack Kornfield and Sharon Salzberg, and what I do with Mind Rolling, and Krishna Das and Lama Surya Das and Dale Borglum and more. Um, it's all part of our nonprofit foundation, Love, Serve, Remember. And although we don't have an official appeal month where we give people an opportunity to see what it is they can do to support the network, I'm using this particular occasion, this moment, to definitely appeal to everybody. And in this case, I mean, I usually talk about the Amazon link and so on, and make recommendations. I don't do much of it on Ram Dass Here and Now, but I would like to make one suggestion as a possibility for everyone to consider out there, and that is simply if you could do a recurring donation of $9, which is the magic number, being a part of the guru number 108, so 9, 27, 54, 108, any one of those, but let's just start with $9. If you can just go up to Be Here Now Network and go to the support or donate button up on the menu and do a recurring donation. That'll go a long way to support the network, which does need support. There's a bunch of people who are putting together all of the material, the content, the editing, the sourcing, the actual endeavor of each one of us that are doing these podcasts, putting the time in and to present them properly, and finding, in this case with Ram Dass, I engage the people in the media library, Nathan and Cheyenne, to really source out of this extraordinarily large host of talks and videos and so on with Ram Dass, to just get the right exact one that really can help all of us on our path. So I'm not going to say any more than that, but I do wish you would all consider helping us out here. We're in the middle of the summer, a little bit of the doldrums, with people very active, vacationing and so on and so forth. But we all would appreciate it, and thank you for the support you have given. Onward and forward. So this talk, basically, it's Ram Dass talking about how to live, actually, as with everything Ram Dass does, it's way more complex than saying any one thing as the definitive theme of a talk. But in this case, he does talk about how to live on this plane as if we are all us. And if that isn't certainly one of the biggest issues of today, where we are now with the deep, deep, deep polarization in this country, in this world, actually, in so many different ways. So how any advice we can get on that subject is absolutely well taken as far as I'm concerned. So that's the initial point of discussion for Ram Dass. There's also discussion around the incarnation and how we embody that incarnation, and how we don't pay the kind of attention to it that we might in regards to its preciousness. But the other thing, right in the very beginning, and this made me think of something, he talks about the Tao. The Tao is the natural law of things. And I don't know, we've all heard of the Tao, and there's many great poetic readings from the Tao. And of course, this is part of Taoism, Taoism, pronounced Taoism. And just recently, I did a podcast on mind rolling with Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who's just a wonderful very free spirit regarding how he brings together all the different traditions and honors them all. And he wrote a beautiful book called the World Wisdom Bible, in which he compares all of them, and he goes through the different representations of mystic traditions, religious traditions, around spiritual traditions around the world. And I found, as I read through them myself, I went, wow, the Taoism is, it's like, wow, we could really use that today. And I thought I'd just give you an idea of how he couches it. The existential problem highlighted in Taoism is the loss of our intrinsic naturalness. Right? We can all relate with that. The Taoists hold that we are born free, that goodness arises naturally from living that freedom, and the constraints of formal training and education ensnare us in systems of convention that rob us of that freedom. The solution is to return to the Tao, the way of nature, and to live in harmony with it. The Taoist celebrates the genuine person. I like that term. To cultivate our innate authenticity, we practice, quote unquote, sitting and forgetting, which is ego erasing meditation, dropping the self and resting as the self, big S. Quote unquote, fasting of the mind, freeing oneself of isms and ideologies. And, quote unquote, free and easy wandering, which is ecstatic journeying in the mountains, all of which foster an alignment with the Tao, the way of nature. Isn't that great? I love it. Ram Dass also talks here about how science is meeting mysticism. Now, this is back in 1980, and it harks all the way to today, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama is working with people like Richie Davidson on really bringing together scientifically. They're experimenting with meditation and so on, and seeing that certainly the Tibetan reality, which has been exposed in numerous books and revealed teachings, really meets up with what science is proving out. So Ram Dass, it's interesting, in 1980 was talking about that and how that started to fit together for him. He also talked about how he was missing a boat, about honoring a human incarnation, which I was mentioning before, and honoring what it's about, and honoring the preciousness of human birth. And I myself had a teaching, and this is something I've mentioned many podcasts ago on Mind Rolling. But when I was in India with Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba, it's a whole kind of miracle story. But anyhow, I ended up with Kalu Rinpoche, one of the great lamas of the last century. And I asked him about, I just came from the mountains, and where it's, I was really in a good place meditating, and now I'm in the city and I'm completely distracted and so on. Do you have to be in the mountains to be able to really identify with your true self? I didn't say it in so many words, but that was what I was meaning. And he gave me a teaching around the 7 siddhas of India, who all became enlightened through work. One was a weaver, one was a pottery maker, etc., etc. And so that it was not necessary to be in the mountains to be able to meditate on the true self, and doing it through work and doing it wherever you are was the end game. And then he said to me, and you must recognize that how precious your human birth is, and do not disregard the physical body. You must take care of it because this is the only plane within which you can become free. There are many, many different planes, but only the human plane, rather, is it possible to become completely free. And he made such a big deal out of it. So when Ram Dass talked about honoring the preciousness of human birth, it recalled to me that moment with Kalu Rinpoche. Yeah, what else? He talks about Gnostic intermediaries, this thing that Jung came up with, which a Gnostic intermediary is someone who brings together the East and the West cultures. And certainly if Ram Dass is anything, that would be a good description for what he has done in these decades. With his great capacity for understanding psychology as being a psychologist. And it ends with, well, it doesn't end because we added on one of the Q&As from this particular talk. But there's a story at the very end that he reads it from a book. I got to find out where that book is so we can recommend it. It's a story of Dalai Lama's physician his name is Yeshi Dondin, and I had a good friend who's no longer with us that studied with him. He was an amazing man. I do not believe he is with us in the body right now. It's a story of him going and diagnosing someone with chronic disease in a hospital with regular doctors, and they wanted to just see how he diagnosed it from the Tibetan medicine point of view. And it's a simple story. It's absolutely beautiful. When I just listened to it not long ago, as I was going through this talk, it just gave me the most inner peaceful feeling. I mean, I hope it does the same for you. It's just an amazing just a beautiful little story. It's nothing, and yet it's everything. It's just wonderful. And then, as I said, we did put a Q&A. Someone asked Ram Dass, do you have any nagging doubts at this stage of the game? Well, this is in 1980. And he gave a very interesting reply. I'll leave it at that. Well, thanks for listening to our podcast, the Ram Dass Here and Now podcast on the Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com and check out everything else we have going, all the wonderful articles and words of, what are the heart wisdom that we have going. Can't even remember the damn name of it. And different representations from the teachers. We have this host of, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, of incredible teachers. So take advantage of it, and we appreciate the support, and we do continue to need that support. Whatever you can do, we thank you in advance. Here is Ram Dass, Here and Now, how to live on this plane as if we are all us.
So, what you are facing as you start to play with these planes of consciousness, these planes of reality, is that you are dealing with paradoxes that you must incorporate into your being, because to be an impeccable warrior means that you are going to start to live simultaneously on many planes of reality, not go back and forth from one to the other. And there becomes the stinker in social action. Because for me to go into the plane of reality where I see that we are all one, and then come back into my separateness as an American where I am part of 6% of the population using 40% of the natural resources, and dealing with the fact that somebody is blind in India for want of an operation that costs $5, and that I'm going to use my next $5 to go to the movies. If it was my father, I wouldn't, because he's part of my phenomenological self. If it is my cousin, it isn't. But somehow that person in India is them when I'm here, but when I'm one, it's us. And the interesting question is, when you bring it all together, how do you live on this plane as if we are all us? That's what you start to do as an impeccable warrior. Your game is clean across levels of reality. Now, some of the issues that come up are the ones that are in the title. Take free will and determinism. On this plane, you chose to come into this room to hear this lecture. I'm over not making this very naive, you philosophers understand. Not by choice, but because I'm naive. You come in here because you chose to come in here, and that was the experience of free will. And on this plane of reality, you have free will. If you go back one step further out, up into, or two steps back into what's called the causal plane of reality, you see the lawfulness of the universe. And you know, even as psychologists on this plane, that your decision-making doesn't come out of the void. It does ultimately, but it doesn't immediately. It comes out of previous experiences. Well, it comes out of everything else in the universe, because everything in the universe is lawfully interrelated to everything else, and the smallest leaf falling affects everything else. And you begin to experience what's called the Tao, or the natural law of things. And every system of studies of the students of the law, like, for example, students of the Torah, or any of the kind of deep, intricate laws of the universe, go back and back and back and get to the place where the planes of reality go back until they get to the edge where form and formless start to mingle with one another. And I know Ron Valley is going to talk about this tomorrow in a much more sophisticated way, but let me just read this statement from physics, which is getting close to this game. The atom, the fundamental building block of matter, originally conceived as a discrete bit of matter, has passed through a stage of dissolution, finally suffering decomposition into elementary particles. These, in turn, fell under the spell of the principle of complementarity, not permitting to say whether they are waves or particles. As it stands now, matter does not matter anymore. It is dissolved into a web of abstract relations and is no longer material. Reality may now be regarded as the actualizing appearance of observational relations, with visible reality merely an isolated phenomenon. So that all of our models of the universe, which we counted on science to protect the solidity of thingness, including ourselves, physics sold us down the river, back into the void, and said, in fact, there are not things on which all of this is based. And there are not things built on things. There is nothing built on nothing that appears as something. And that is the sophistication that now dovetails in with what mystics have been saying and writing for thousands of years, and the beautiful, exquisite moment when the games are beginning to come together. And suddenly I can talk to physicists and we can hear one another afresh. So that to look at a limited cause and effect relationship and yet recognize that everything in the universe is related, where are you going to get a factor analytic program to cover that one? See? See? And you're also facing that as long as you do your research based on one plane of reality, for example, we studied the effects of parent behavior on children's personalities in Freud's psychosexual stages and how parents punish their kids in relation. All right, the best you get in personality research, I don't know what they're doing these days, but 15 years ago, the best we were getting is a correlation of about 50. That's accounting, it's better than chance, we got something, but it's accounting for about 25% of the variability, right? That leaves quite a bit of room, doesn't it? 75% of the variability, which we can say is poor methodology. That would allow for reincarnation and karma. I just wanted to make sure there was space left. I mean, if there wasn't any space, I didn't want to bother with this stuff. But it turned out that in current research, there's plenty of space left for all of these other theories. All right? for bringing other planes of measurement and reality and conception into our work. Okay, I will... what then happened in the middle 70s for me, I know you're looking at your watch and you'd like questions and answers, but I don't think we'll get to them because I think I'm just going to go on. Is that okay? Okay. I'm just going to go on for a while, and then probably I'll stop at the end of the lecture, and then those that want to stay, even if there's no meeting here, and ask questions, I'll welcome them. I don't get an audience like this every day. I can't imagine who you are. I mean, you're me somewhere, but it's far out. What happened in '75 was that, and on from there, was that I began to see that, and I don't mean '75 specifically, but somewhere in that area, that I was missing a boat about honoring what a human incarnation was about. I was pushing away, I was throwing out the baby with the bath. I was so enamored of Eastern traditions, and the Eastern systems tend to be appropriate for cultures in which personality, ego is basically role identity. And they are reasonably very structured societies with a focus on transcendence, and in which the basic concept of life is the wheel in which nothing's really going anywhere. We in the West have a much more existential ego. We have a sense of linearity, of we're going somewhere, that culture is evolving, so on. And we have developed the power of our intellect to control and master nature, while in the East it's been much more surrender into the flow of things. And it turns out, as I finally stand back far enough, that each of them has a tremendous amount to offer, and that maybe you and I are at the cusp of an amalgam of those things, and that I am one of the players in what's called the team that Carl Jung talks about as Gnostic intermediaries, people who are bringing cultures together through their own blood. He said it drove Richard Wilhelm insane to try to do that, who translated the I Ching from Chinese, but maybe I'll have better luck. I began to see that it was possible to have your cake and eat it too, in a sense. That you could function using your ego as a functional working device without being ego attached. You could use the ego without necessarily identifying with it. And you could remain in the spaciousness that surrounds without being dissociative and pushing away. And what I was beginning to experience is that I had to notice that I was pushing away the physical plane, and I had to go back into it. And one of my teachers, who is not on this physical plane, who speaks to me through a medium, I mean, I'll really let you show you how nutty it all is. I have a spook as one of my guides. He said to me, he said a wonderful thing. He said, "You humans are so stuck in your dualistic mind." I mean, who else could say that but a dolphin? It's a great line, "You humans." I mean, very few people ever talk to you from outside the human realm. And he said, you are afraid. He said, "You came to the earth to come to school, and why don't you take your curriculum instead of trying to skip school all the time?" And I realized that there was function in my humanity and function in the experiences that were being presented to me, and that I had to, what Buddha said, honor the preciousness of my human birth. And I have been exploring what that means since in the past 5 years, in terms of what it means to be my father's son, what it means to be an American, a Jew, a member of an ecosystem, a member of the planet, a sexual being, a an intellectual being, and so on? How do you use all these things, and how do you honor them and participate in them at the same moment as the Bhagavad Gita, which is my basic teaching text for me, says, do what you do, but do not be identified with being the actor, A, and B, be not attached to the fruits of your actions. There is speaking happening. I am right here. The speaking is having an effect on you. The effect on you is your karma, not mine. It's only mine if I buy it, if I am attached to the fruits of the actions. I am merely doing what I can do as impeccably as I can do it. What effect it has is what effect it has. These are rules of the game that lend themselves to psychological systems very, very easily, by the way, if you can just start to hear them from that other framework. I'm not going to speak about methods for changing consciousness. That's a whole other domain. I will talk just a moment about systems that exist in other cultures that are applicable, that are usable by psychology. For example, the chakra system in energy systems, which is known as working with Kundalini. If you consider and now that acupuncture and a number of systems are coming in which are working with much more subtle energy systems that aren't immediately measurable by physiological measuring devices. And by the way, to say it baldly, as far as I am concerned, the way in which we know in the universe is not limited to thinking. It is not limited to our senses. It is not limited to our physiological, neurophysiological brain processes, laterality notwithstanding. It is a much more exquisite game than that. And what scientists did was they pounced on laterality as the explanation for all meditation, for everything. Biofeedback doesn't get at the essence of what the game is about. Laterality theories do not get at it. This is all still looking for the watch under the street lamp, as far as I'm concerned. I just wanted to get it out front, so save trouble later on. Questions? Now, in the chakra systems, if you want to see parallels that are interesting, you can see that the first chakra, which is located between the genitals and the anus, sort of up in the nerve, right up there, you could understand within Darwinian theory of evolution and people fighting with each other for survival, because that's the survival mechanism. This is oversimplified and analogs, but let's work with them. You go up to the second one, which is called, interestingly enough, Svadhisthana, meaning her favorite resort. Speaking of the snake, the serpent comes up and stops there because it's it's like the Riviera. And that's the sensual chakra, and that's where Freud was. He spent all his time there with guilt, and guilt is as much part of it as joy. I mean, it's just, it's the opposite coin. It's the polarity that's just as attached. And he built a whole system of reality out of that, right? And he interpreted everything else in terms of second chakra, which upset other of his colleagues like Adler, who was busy with the third chakra, which was concerned with power. And he built his whole trip on power. Jung, on the other hand, got into the fourth chakra with the collective unconscious and with the sense of brotherhood or humanity, and his reality was a fourth chakra reality. And just like standing on the corner watching all the girls go by, personality, these are different ways of cutting the pie. Each of these chakras has an entirely different reality connected with it. And when you run through your own chakras, you will see that you are it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of phenomenon. You are very different people. I love you until I'm turned on by you, and then screw you, I want. It's the difference between love and lust. Love is fourth chakra.